I've poured coffee for more generals than I care to count. Each one walked past me like I was part of the furniture. Just another contractor in black slacks and a white blouse, stationed outside Conference Room 4C in the Capitol Military Complex, tucked deep into the East Wing's intelligence corridor. My name tag read C. Ward. And that's all anyone knew. Just initials, no titles, no stories. No one asked. It had been 16 months since I left the service. I'd traded in a headset and a battlefield for thermoses and ceramic cups. Nobody in that corridor knew I once wore body armor heavier than their briefcases, that I used to speak in coordinates and strike windows, not cream and sugar. I was 29. Too young, some said, to already feel like a ghost. The pay wasn't great, but the job kept me close to the world I had once belonged to, albeit from the margins. The complex was alive with polished boots and classified briefings, but my role was quiet. Safe. Invisible. I didn't mind. I told myself I didn't mind. Most days passed in a blur of refill requests and the smell of industrial roast. Until that morning. At 0750, I wheeled the card into the room. The usual crowd had already gathered. Officers from operations, 2 colonels I recognized but didn't know by name, and a few junior analysts. They barely glanced my way. I moved on autopilot. Creamer, sugar, fresh napkins. I placed everything with precision, habit from another life. Then he walked in. Rear Admiral Grant Stillwater. I hadn't seen him in person since Kandahar. He was a captain back then. Quiet, precise, dangerous in the way only a man who never raised his voice could be. His hair was more gray now, but the command presence hadn't dimmed. He scanned the room, then looked at me. His eyes stopped. He stared longer than he should have. Then he said it. 2 words. Tempest 3. Silence. The room went still. I heard a ceramic cup stop midair, the clink of a spoon frozen. My spine locked straight. No one had used that call sign since my last mission. Not since Operation Night Ridge, the final one before my honorable discharge. Not since the last time I keyed a mic and ordered steel on target with friendly forces only meters away. Someone, maybe the major nearest me, said, "Sir?" But Admiral Stillwater didn't answer. He was still looking at me. "Sergeant Camille Ward," he said finally. "Joint Terminal Air Controller, 117th Tactical Support Squadron. 2 deployments. 45 confirmed airstrikes. 0 incidents. Top of her class at Nellis." The room turned. Stares settled on me like lead. I didn't move. "She's serving coffee," one colonel said with a scoff. "She is a Jate EAC," Stillwater corrected. "One of the best I've worked with." My throat tightened. I kept my face blank. It was easier that way. Always easier to be the background noise, not the center of it. Stillwater pulled a folder from his case and flipped it open. "I need her take on something." "Sir," the senior officer at the table said hesitantly, "this is a compartmentalized briefing. She still holds a TSSCI clearance through her contractor status. Valid. Logged. Certified." Stillwater replied without looking up. "In fact, she's got higher clearance than 2/3 of the personnel in this room." The major beside him blinked. "She's a civilian." "She's a veteran," Stillwater snapped. "And she knows how to keep people alive when the math gets tight and the bullets don't stop." I stood perfectly still. Inside, my pulse was trying to run sprints. Then Stillwater gestured to an empty seat. "Sergeant Ward, if you're willing, sit." I paused. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't normal. But this man didn't care about normal. He remembered. I sat. And just like that, everything changed. I sat straight, hands folded in my lap, while the temperature in the room dropped by 10 degrees. Some of them glanced at each other. Some looked at me like I was a threat that had just been activated. 1 or 2, I could tell, were trying to remember if they'd said something dismissive about me earlier. I didn't look at them. Admiral Stillwater turned back to the briefing screen. A satellite image flickered on, a rugged range of mountains, somewhere deep and unfriendly. The terrain was familiar, the kind that had teeth. Red markers bloomed across the screen. Enemy positions. Too many of them. Blue blips clustered in a ravine. That wasn't good. Stillwater tapped the image with a pen. "Recon Team Echo 2-1 is pinned down. They've been on the move for 16 hours. They've taken contact from multiple directions and are nearly out of munitions. We suspect they've been tracked by thermal." "What's the timeline?" asked a major across from me. 30 minutes before their overrun," Stillwater replied flatly. "Their JTAC went down 2 hours ago." Broken leg. No evac window. And without coordination, no air assets are engaging. I didn't need more. I saw the problem immediately. The terrain was narrow, steep, bad angles, no open LZs, and tree cover that would break up visual targeting. It was like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces turned upside down. Stillwater turned to me. Camille, can you work this? The name caught me. Camille. Nobody had called me that in uniform. There, I was always Ward or Tempest 3. I looked at the screen again. My eyes scanned the elevation markers, wind indicators, enemy clusters. The old habits started to spool up. I started building the strike in my head before I even realized I was doing it. Yes, sir, I said. Stillwater gave a short nod and tapped his phone. You're revalidated under Emergency Command Authority. Your TSSCI is confirmed. You'll direct the airstrikes from ops. One of the colonels looked like he was going to argue, but then he didn't. We left the conference room in silence. The coffee cart stayed behind. Inside the operations center, the lights were low and the room glowed with blue monitors and quiet tension. People moved quickly, but with discipline. I was handed a headset. The frequency was hot. My palms were dry. Tempest 3, you're on with Raptor Flight, 2 ship of F-16s, orbiting at Angels 25, came a controller's voice. I keyed the mic. My voice came out calm, precise, like it always used to. Raptor, this is Tempest 3. I've got troops in contact and a priority strike package for you. Target grid to follow. And just like that, I was back in it. I fed them the 9-line. Confirmed laser designation. Checked the offset from friendlies, 160 meters. Tight, but doable. Raptor Flight acknowledged. In from the north. Tally target. Requesting clearance hot. I paused for just half a second. Just enough to make sure. The drone feed showed enemy movement pushing in from the east, but the ridge line to the west was clear, still an exit route if we cleared the pressure. Raptor, you are cleared hot, I said. The first paveway dropped clean. The drone feed bloomed with dust and fire. Splash, the pilot confirmed. Good effect on target. Shift right. Secondary cluster. Same heading. Re-attack approved, I ordered. Within 6 minutes, both enemy formations were suppressed. The Echo 2-1 team had an opening to break contact and head for the extraction site. A pair of Blackhawks swept in low and fast, just as we'd cleared the ridge line. 0 friendlies lost. When I pulled off the headset, the room was still. Then someone said, she didn't miss a beat. Stillwater just nodded. That's how it's done. The room was quiet, but my head was not. Even after the drone feed had gone dark and the headset had been pulled, the rhythm still echoed in my ears. Grid coordinates, call signs, the silent counting of seconds between a request and a response. It was all still there. I sat at the console a moment longer than necessary. Then I stood, trying not to notice how the others watched me now. Like I was something different. A tool they hadn't realized was still sharp. Stillwater walked beside me as I stepped out of the ops center. That was clean work, he said. It had to be, I replied. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. They had no margin. You still see everything at once, he added. That's rare. I didn't answer. Instead, I thought about Echo 2-1. I thought about the relief in the pilot's voice. And I thought about the years I'd spent pouring coffee, hoping I'd forget how to calculate drop distance in my sleep. We stopped outside the operations wing, back in the polished marble hallway where it had all started earlier that morning. The same hallway where I'd rolled in with the cart. The cart that was still there. Stillwater gestured toward it. You shouldn't be doing that anymore. I didn't say anything. You're not coffee support, Camille. Not by a long shot. I let out a breath. I needed a job. This one paid. And it was close enough to the noise that I didn't feel completely gone. Stillwater nodded. I get it. But don't stay invisible because it's comfortable. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a card. Clean. Unfolded. Government-grade stock. The kind that meant business before you even read the name. I'm building a cadre, he said. Joint operations training. We need people who've seen it. Not just textbook instructors. You'd be training the next generation of JTACs. The ones who'll call the next 47 strikes. I stared at the card. My fingers curled around it slowly. It felt heavier than it should have. Maybe because it wasn't just paper. It was a door. Stillwater turned to go. Think about it, he said. You earned your place in that room today. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He walked away. I stood there for a long time, next to the coffee cart, watching the polished floors reflect faces that would never know what had just happened behind those operations doors. And maybe that was okay. Not everyone needed to know. But I knew. I was Tempest 3, and I was back. I didn't sleep much that night. The images replayed themselves again and again. The ridgeline on the screen, the stutter of the feed as the bomb impacted, the sudden shift from chaos to clarity. It felt like stepping back into a part of myself I'd tried to bury under civilian routines and muted uniforms. The next morning, I reported for my shift like always. No orders had changed. No reassignment had been filed. To the world, I was still C. Ward, contractor. Coffee duty. Floor 3. Same badge, same cart. But eyes followed me now. It started with glances, longer, more curious. Then came the half-whispered questions. Is that the one the admiral spoke to? Someone said she used to work strike ops. Is that real? One of the young analysts bumped into me in the hallway and muttered, "Ma'am." I almost laughed. A week ago, I was Miss, or nothing at all. By lunch, a major I'd never spoken to stopped me in the hall. "Hey, Ward, you really served with 117th TSS?" I nodded. "Yes, sir." He blinked. I didn't know they had any female JTACs back then. "They did," I said. "We just didn't wear it on our sleeves." I didn't know any one explanations. But part of me wanted to explain anyway. Not for validation, but because people like me were written off too quickly. Because nobody expects the woman pouring coffee to know how to coordinate fast air under fire with 2 squads pinned in a kill box. That had always been the strangest part. How invisible the hard jobs became once you stopped doing them. It wasn't just that they forgot. It was that they never really saw you in the first place. I remembered one mission years ago in the hills outside Gardes. A Ranger fire team had been pinned down by crossfire from 2 elevated positions. The valley floor offered no cover, no maneuver space. I'd called for an A-10 run, single pass, tight angle. The pilot's voice had cracked in my headset. "That's danger close, Tempest." I'd said, "Do it." He did. The sound tore through my bones. But when the dust settled, my guys were still alive. I never forgot their faces when I walked up afterward. Mud in my hair, radio still slung over my shoulder, and blood on my sleeves that wasn't mine. One of them just said, "Didn't know JTACs came in 5'3". I didn't bother correcting them then, either. I returned to my post that afternoon, back at the cart. Still on the periphery. Still not quite back in uniform. But the card in my back pocket felt like more than an offer. It felt like a reminder. Some things don't fade. Some call signs echo longer than people expect. And I wasn't done yet. 3 days passed. No follow-up. No call from Stillwater. No official acknowledgement of what I'd done in the operations center. It was as if the whole thing had been folded into a compartmentalized file and locked away, just like every other mission I had ever run. But that was the game, wasn't it? When you do it right, no one knows what you did. Just that something didn't go wrong. I kept showing up for my shift. Kept pouring coffee. But now I noticed more things than I used to. A lieutenant colonel lingered longer at the station than needed. A young intel officer flinched when I glanced at the ops board he was holding. Some even tried small talk. Clumsy attempts to ask the question without asking. And then there were the ones who avoided eye contact altogether. Some people can't handle seeing past the box they put you in. You're supposed to be one thing. You surprise them, and it makes them uncomfortable. That suited me fine, because I wasn't doing this for them. I was doing it for the ones I'd watched from the back of a CH-47 as we lifted out of hot zones. For the pilots who keyed in strike runs on blind faith. For the infantry grunts who looked at me with soot-covered faces and silently begged me to get it right. Because if I was wrong, if I misread the terrain or dropped a bomb 10 meters off, people died. The silence in those decisions is heavier than anyone tells you. The first time I felt it was on my first deployment. A dirt village outside Lushkar. We'd been running a night op, no moonlight, bad comms. A ranger squad had gone in for an HVT grab and ran right into a secondary element waiting for them. I was the only JTAC in range. We had an F-15 overhead. Single payload. One shot. I remember kneeling in the dust, headset jammed tight, sweat freezing to my spine while I read the grid off the back of my hand. Tempest 3, confirm laser is live. Affirm, I said. Spot locked. Cleared hot. When the blast came, I didn't breathe. Seconds later, the team lead came on the net, short and sharp. Direct hit. Clear. You saved us. I shook for 15 minutes after that. Nobody saw. That was when I realized something that stayed with me every mission after. You don't get to be wrong. Not once. Now, standing behind a cart in a building where mistakes were padded by policy and distance, I realized I still carried that same weight. Even in slacks and a blouse, I couldn't put it down. So when Stillwater's call finally came, I wasn't surprised. Just ready. The message came through secure text. Report to room 8C at 0900. Use blue level entry. GS. That was all it said. No further explanation. But I didn't need one. Blue level entry meant above top secret. And room 8C? That was 3 floors below ground, behind a blast door few contractors even knew existed. I arrived early. The guard at the checkpoint glanced at my badge, then at a secondary list on his terminal. His demeanor changed when he saw my name. You're cleared. Straight down the hall, ma'am. Ma'am. I kept walking. The walls were thicker down there, more reinforced. The air was still, heavier somehow, like the oxygen had been rationed through old filters and war stories. Inside room 8C, Admiral Stillwater sat at the far end of a long table, flanked by 2 other officers I didn't recognize. One was Navy 06, judging by the rank. The other wore civilian clothes, but had the kind of stare that screamed agency. Stillwater motioned to a chair. Take a seat, Tempest. I sat. The civilian leaned forward. We reviewed your emergency coordination, the strike package, the audio logs. It was textbook. I nodded. Thank you. Your security clearance has been reactivated for full operational interface, Stillwater said. Effective immediately. The words hit harder than I expected. Not for the access, but for the acknowledgement. You said you needed someone to train stacks, I said. Is that what this is about? Stillwater slid a folder across the table. It was thick. Inside were names, units, rotation dates. We've got a problem, he said. Most of the current instructors haven't seen live fire in years. Some never have. The newer stacks are fast, smart, but they freeze under pressure. What they need is someone who's been there, who knows what it feels like when everything rides on a single coordinate. He looked at me. Someone like you. For a moment, I said nothing. I ran my hand over the folder's cover. It didn't just represent work. It represented continuity, purpose, a way back in that didn't require me to prove anything with a weapon, but with knowledge, with experience earned in the kind of silence you only hear after a strike lands. What's the scope? I asked finally. 6-month rotation, the civilian said. You'll build scenario models, oversee live exercises, mentor in the sim labs. Location? Fort Armitage. You'd be lead coordinator for advanced air-ground integration. Tempest cadre, they're calling it. I smiled. First time in a while that it didn't feel forced. I'll do it, I said. Stillwater smiled too. Good. Because we already told them you would. The room softened just a bit. I stood and offered my hand. Stillwater took it firmly. This time, he said, you teach them how to carry it. The weight, the decisions, the silence. I nodded. I can do that. And for the first time since I left the wire, I believed it. Fort Armitage was an old base, barracks built from concrete and patience, with a training range that sprawled for miles. Wind cut through the valley every morning like it had something to prove. Dust coated everything. Radios crackled even when they weren't keyed. It felt like home. My official title was Joint Air-Ground Training Officer, Tempest Cadre. Unofficially, I was the one who'd actually done it. They sent me a class of 12. Some fresh from tech school, others rotated out of operational units. One had even done a short tour embedded with a Marine recon team, but admitted he'd never called a live strike. The first day, I had them sit in silence. No slides, no protocol reviews, just a satellite image on the screen, an image of that same ridgeline where I'd re-entered the net weeks before, the one where Echo 2-1 had almost died. This, I told them, is what it looks like when the map doesn't match reality. I walked the room, slowly, letting the silence stretch, letting them sit with the weight. You've all studied the 9-line. You've memorized brevity codes, altitude thresholds, kill box restrictions. But none of that matters if your voice shakes. They stared at me. You freeze, I said, and people die. One of the younger ones shifted in his seat. He was the only one wearing fresh boots. You were Tempest 3, right? He asked. I looked at him. Still am. He swallowed. The one from the Reaper Ridge run? That's the one. The room got even quieter. Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt them from the ground up. We ran full mission simulations, bad terrain, unreliable comms, heat signatures mixed with civilian patterns. I gave them targets that didn't move and friendly positions that did. They struggled. Hard. But they learned. They started reading between the lines. Not just the math, but the instinct. They started understanding that JTACs don't just call bombs, they guide life through chaos. After one brutal sim, one of the trainees, Callahan, former artillery spotter, came up to me after the debrief. "How did you know that drone feed was showing a decoy?" I handed him a pen. "Tell me where the smoke drifted." He stared, then looked back at the still image on the screen. "No movement," he whispered. "Wind was calm." "Exactly," I said. "So where was that dust plume coming from?" He blinked, and I could see the light go on behind his eyes. "That's why I'd come back. Not to relive the missions, but to pass them on. Not the glory, not the medals, but the parts that matter. The edge between precision and catastrophe." And they listened, because they knew I'd done it for real. Not in theory, not on paper, but under fire, under pressure, with seconds left. I was no longer just a name in a personnel file. No longer a whisper behind a coffee station. I was their instructor now, and they were becoming something more than they'd expected. It was supposed to be a training day. We had a full-spectrum sim planned. Mock strikes, real-time adjustments, SATCOM integration. Everything was staged to simulate pressure without real stakes. Until the call came through. The operations director, Major Heston, stepped into the control booth, headset slung low around his neck. His expression changed. "We've got a live situation," he said. The trainees looked up from their stations. Some stiffened. Some leaned in. Heston motioned to me. Outside of Green Sector, a recon drone picked up a heat signature clustering pattern. "Remote unit on patrol hasn't checked in. No confirmation, but higher wants eyes and possible response protocol prepared just in case." He paused. "And they want it run by you." My trainees turned to me. Not with doubt, but with something else. Readiness. "All right," I said, stepping forward. "You've trained for this. You know the rhythm. We're going live on the board. Ward to control. Patch me to the Overwatch net." A voice crackled in my headset. "Tempest 3, this is Raven Ops. You're cleared for coordination advisory." I nodded once. "Okay, team," I said, turning to my trainees. "This isn't a drill anymore. This is what we trained for." Callahan spoke first. "Elevation data's already updated on the main screen. Drone overhead sweep confirmed one thermal contact moving against wind direction. Overlay that with civilian no-go zones. I want a margin of error on all quadrants." They moved fast, efficient, focused. We built a real strike plan in under 9 minutes. When the call came back that the patrol had finally checked in, late, shaken, but alive, everyone exhaled. I didn't, because I saw what I needed to see. They weren't kids anymore. They had held the line under pressure. They didn't just follow checklists, they led. Even when the weight came fast and unexpected. After the confirmation came in, Major Heston approached me quietly. "They did well," he said. "No," I replied, watching them recheck their work. "They did right." Later that evening, Callahan stayed behind. He lingered as the others filed out. "You ever regret leaving the field?" he asked. I thought about it. The silence of the ridgelines. The buzz of radios mid-strike. The moments right after a bomb hit and you waited to hear if you got it right. Sometimes, I admitted. But not today. Because today, they were ready. And I was the reason. We gathered for final evaluation the following week. It was standard protocol. Review the sims, debrief the pressure drills, identify gaps. But for me, it wasn't about metrics anymore. It was about who they'd become. I stood at the front of the training room. The same place where I once watched their shoulders slump under the weight of a missed coordinate or a blown sim. Now, they sat up straight, focused, quietly confident. "You're not just passing checklists anymore," I told them. "You're making decisions that others might live or die by. And the hardest part? You won't always know if you made the right one until after." They listened like it mattered, because now it did. I pulled up a replay of the simulation we'd run when the real-world call came in. Highlighted the tight timeline, the identification lag, the fallback plan they had built even as the scenario was unfolding. "You adapted. You didn't freeze," I said. "And that's what separates textbook from real world." Callahan spoke up. "We didn't panic because you didn't." That landed harder than I expected. Because he was right. I hadn't felt the creeping doubt, the fear of being out of practice. I hadn't even remembered the coffee cart. I had simply stepped back into the role I'd left behind. Only this time, I wasn't calling in the fire. I was teaching others how to do it right. The graduation came a few days later. No fanfare, just a quiet gathering on the range, a certificate, a handoff of credentials. But the look in their eyes, that told the real story. They were ready. After the ceremony, I stood alone for a moment, watching the sun settle low across the horizon beyond the control tower. That's when Stillwater appeared. Word as they passed with top marks, he said. They earned it. He handed me a folder. New class starts in 4 weeks. You up for it? I didn't need to think. Always, I said. He smiled, then turned to leave, but paused. You know, he said, the last time I saw someone turn a group around like that, it was you. Out there. Before they even knew your name. I let that settle a moment. Then nodded. They know it now. I kept the card. Not Stillwater's, though I still had that one too, but the one they gave me at the close of the first training cycle. A simple, matte black badge with white letters etched across the top. Tempest Cadre. Instructor, JTAC Operations. C. Ward, Tempest 3. It wasn't official military issue, but it meant more than the last ribbon I'd earned in theater. Because this one came not from a rank or a deployment, but from respect. Earned, not assumed. Proven, not given. And it reminded me that I hadn't lost the part of myself I thought I'd buried in coffee stations and Pentagon corridors. I still had it. A month later, I was back on the range. A new group, green, wide-eyed, smarter than they knew. I saw nerves in the way they gripped their styluses, in the way their voices shook the first time they read coordinates aloud. I didn't scold them. I told them the truth. There will come a time when it all goes sideways. The terrain won't match the satellite feed. The friendlies will be off-grid. The comms will drop mid-transmission, and you'll be standing there with a pilot in your ear and lives on your line. I paused. Let the weight hit. And when that happens, you don't ask if you're ready. You act like you are, because you have to be. No one moved. Then one of them, a woman with dark eyes and the kind of posture that hides uncertainty, raised her hand. What was it like, she asked, your first real call-in? I remembered. I always remembered. The cold sweat. The sand in my mouth. The pilot's voice saying, confirm target. The knowledge that I could be wrong. That I couldn't be. But what I said was this. I was terrified. But I did it anyway. And I've done it 46 more times since. She nodded slowly. That was enough. That night, after training, I walked to the far edge of the base where the lights dim and the wind tells old stories. I stood alone, the stars above just beginning to emerge through the dusk. I pulled the old card from my wallet. Stillwater's. Worn now. Creased at the corners. I held it for a moment. Then I let it go. Let the wind take it. I didn't need it anymore. I was already where I belonged. Not behind a cart. Not waiting to be seen. But in the fight, still. Even if the fight now was teaching others how to carry the weight with calm hands and steady eyes. Because call signs never die. They echo. And some, like Tempest 3, find new voices to carry them forward. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.